All right, so get ready, because today we're diving into something you don't hear about every day. It's called Shankhprakshalan.
Yeah.
And it's this, well, it's intense. Let's just say that.
It's intense.
It's this intense cleansing practice
Yeah.
that comes from Hatha Yoga. And basically involves, well, you could say, a whole lot of salt water.
Yeah.
And some very specific yoga poses.
Definitely not your typical detox juice cleanse.
No.
No, we're talking about like potentially hours spent drinking the saline solution and then, doing these poses that are supposed to, well, encourage things along. Let's just say that.
Right. So if you're looking for a really gentle, hit the reset button, this might not be it. But if you're intrigued by this idea of a deep internal cleanse and something that has these really old roots in these ancient yogic traditions, then definitely keep listening, because today we're going really deep on Shankhprakshalan and really trying to separate fact from anecdote and kind of exploring what are the potential benefits, what are the drawbacks.
And maybe just to clarify for people, because that's a mouthful, that name, Shankhprakshalan.
Yes, it is.
Shankha, that actually refers to a conch shell, which represents the spiral shape of, well, your whole digestive system, not just the colon, right?
Oh, so we're talking about a full digestive overhaul here.
Exactly, a full overhaul.
Wow.
And prakshalana means basically to wash completely. So Shankhprakshalan, which is often shortened to SP, means basically to completely wash the entire digestive tract.
We're talking a deep, deep clean from start to finish?
Yes, a deep clean.
Now, we're drawing insights today from a few different places, but mainly we're looking at this yoga practitioner and blogger, Subhash Mittal. He documented his whole SP journey on his blog, Yoga with Subhash.
Right.
So we're going to be looking at his experience, but we're also going to be looking at the comments from his readers and kind of their feedback and questions, and then also just pulling in some insights from Fitzer Yoga as well.
Yeah, it's great to have those different perspectives.
Yeah. And you know me, I love a good firsthand account.
Who doesn't?
Right. It just brings it to life.
It does.
And I think what's so interesting about Subhash and his experience is that he didn't just, wake up one morning and decide to do this.
No.
He spent, get this, a year contemplating SP.
Wow.
A year. Really trying to understand the process and the commitment involved. So he talks a lot about the importance of the mental preparation as much as the physical preparation.
Yeah, that makes sense, especially when you consider how long this whole thing takes.
Yeah, because it's not a quick process.
No.
We're talking a good 3 to 4 hours to complete the whole thing.
Yeah, 3-4 hours minimum.
Not to mention needing a full day of rest afterward.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's not something you just squeeze into a busy day.
No.
Subhash talks about clearing your schedule completely.
Yes.
No errands, no work, definitely no social commitments.
Right.
You're dedicating your full energy, both physical and mental.
Yeah, it's a commitment.
For sure.
So I think for our listeners, it would be helpful to kind of walk through it. What are the steps involved? Now, full disclaimer here. This is not a how-to guide.
Definitely.
We are sharing this information purely for educational purposes.
That's right.
Please do not try this at home without the guidance of an experienced practitioner.
100%. Safety first.
Okay.
Always.
So with that said, if we're trying to visualize this, how does this all go down?
Okay, so picture this. It starts the night before, actually, with a light dinner.
Okay.
And Subhash recommends a sattvic meal, which basically means foods that are considered, pure, easily digestible.
Okay.
Promote clarity. Think simple, wholesome ingredients.
Right, so we're priming the system.
Exactly. We're priming the system.
Or what's to come.
And then bright and early the next morning, we're talking 6 or 7 a.m.
Wow.
You start with preparing your saline solution, which is basically lukewarm water.
Okay.
And about 2 teaspoons of salt per gallon of water.
Okay.
Now, we will get into some differing opinions on the whole salt ratio a little bit later.
Okay.
But that's the basic recipe.
All right. So we've got our salt water, gallons of it, apparently.
Yes. What happens next?
Okay. So then it's all about these cycles of drinking the saline solution and performing specific yoga poses.
Okay.
5, to be exact, according to Subhash.
5.
Although Fitzer Yoga actually adds a 6th to the mix. So
really?
A little variation there.
Interesting.
But these asanas, they're specifically designed to help move the water through your system, right?
Okay.
We're talking Tadasana, Tiryak Tadasana, Kati Chakrasana, Tiryak Bhujangasana, and Uddara-Karshanasana.
I'm already lost on the names alone. I know, right? It's a mouthful.
I would need flashcards just to remember the poses, let alone gracefully flow through them.
Right, exactly.
While drinking salt water.
While drinking salt water on an empty stomach.
I mean, do these poses actually, like, help with the whole cleansing process?
So that's where it gets really interesting, right? Because when you understand the mechanics of these asanas, for example, you've got Tadasana, which is mountain pose.
Right.
It's all about lengthening your spine, engaging your core, which can help stimulate digestion.
Okay.
And then you've got Tiryak Tadasana, which is like a side bending variation.
Okay.
That's thought to help move things along the intestinal tract.
Interesting.
So you see how each of these poses has a very specific purpose.
Right, it's very targeted.
And it works in tandem with the saline solution to basically cleanse the entire digestive system.
No wonder Subhash was exhausted.
You're right.
I mean, we're talking like gallons of water, 6 rounds of these poses, and you're repeating that cycle until the water runs clear.
It's a lot.
That's a lot of movement.
A lot of movement, a lot of water.
And then there's that rest period afterward, right?
Oh, yeah, crucial. So after all that, you rest for about an hour, but you try not to fall asleep, which I imagine is pretty difficult.
All right, so you say.
And then you break your fast with khichdi, which is this Ayurvedic dish, rice and lentils cooked with ghee.
Okay, so still light, easily digestible.
Exactly. You don't want to overload your system after all that.
After such an intense cleanse, right. And is that it? Or is that just the beginning?
Well, that's just the beginning in a way. You stick to a light sattvic diet for the entire week following SP. No heavy foods, no dairy, no citrus fruits, anything that might be a bit too much for your system to handle after such a reset.
Wow, so it's like you really have to plan for this, like
a major event.
Like a major event. I'm curious, after all that, how did Subhash feel?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, right? And what about the people commenting on his blog? Did they experience those amazing benefits that he was talking about?
Right, because we can talk about saltwater and yoga poses all day long, but like...
It's the experience that matters.
Yeah, and his blog with all the reader comments, it's like this like front row seat to that experience.
Exactly.
So let's talk about those experiences. What are people saying?
So we've covered the what of Shankhprakshalan. This whole, ancient practice of cleansing the entire digestive system.
Right.
But, we always like to go a little bit deeper here.
Of course.
So I'm interested in the why and the how. Why are people drawn to such an intense practice?
Yeah.
And then how do their bodies actually respond?
Exactly. Because, we could sit here and talk about salt water and yoga poses all day, but it's really about the experience.
It is.
And Subhash's blog, with all the comments, it really gives us this, front row seat to that experience. So let's talk about those experiences. What are people saying?
Yeah. So as you can imagine, it's a mixed bag, right?
Okay.
You have people like Christina, who she raves about SP, incorporates it into her routine twice a year.
Wow.
She says it makes her feel lighter, cleaner, more energized. So for her, it's like this reset button for her entire system, and the benefits clearly outweigh the challenges for her.
Twice a year. That's dedication.
Right.
But I mean, I get it, especially in our modern world, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're bombarded with toxins and processed foods and all this stuff.
Yeah, constantly.
And there's just something about this idea of this deep internal cleanse, going back to these really ancient practices, this desire for a fresh start,
It totally is. And it's not even just about the physical cleanse either.
Right.
A lot of the commenters, including Subhash, talked about this shift in their relationship with food after SP.
Oh, interesting.
So they talk about this newfound awareness of what they're putting into their bodies.
Okay.
And naturally gravitating towards those lighter sattvic foods even after the cleanse is over.
So it's this mental and emotional reset as well. It's not just the physical, but it's
yeah, it's like a cleanse for your mind, body, and spirit.
Yeah, the whole package.
Exactly. It's like that heightened awareness that you feel during and after the cleanse.
Yeah.
That connection to your body signals.
Yeah.
It spills over into your everyday choices.
Interesting.
And that's where it gets really interesting, because we see this intense physical experience can have these ripple effects outward,
right,
influencing your habits and behaviors in a really lasting way.
That's powerful.
It is powerful.
But of course, not everyone's experience is going to be, quite so transformative.
Of course not. Okay.
But we also hear from readers like Stefania Ray, who, while she's intrigued by SP, she seems a little more cautious, right?
Mm-hmm.
She's specifically asking Subhash for very detailed information about that post-cleanse diet.
Okay.
She wants to make sure she's following those guidelines very carefully.
Right. And I think her cautious approach highlights something really crucial here, which is like, this is not a practice you just jump into lightly, you know?
No.
It requires research, it requires preparation, and it requires this willingness to really listen to your body every step of the way.
Yes, and speaking of needing guidance, we hear from one reader, Ashka,
Yeah.
and her experience, I think, really underscores this point.
Okay.
She had an initially positive reaction to SP, but then things took a little bit of a turn.
Wow.
She was experiencing a lack of bowel movement and was understandably concerned, like unsure of how to proceed.
Yeah, in those situations, I imagine you just feel a bit lost.
Right. And it's like, what do you do?
Exactly. And I think her situation, while unfortunate,
Yeah.
it really just drives home how important it is to have that support and guidance of an experienced practitioner.
Right, because they can provide that personalized advice, they can address your concerns, and really help you navigate any bumps in the road.
Right. It's not about blindly following instructions.
That is.
It's about having that knowledgeable guide to help you make informed decisions throughout the process.
Right, and that's key.
Yeah.
And I think this is where we also have to acknowledge, some of the dissenting voices that we saw in the comments.
Oh, great.
Particularly, there was a reader named Saint Bhagwan
Okay.
who expressed some concern about, remember that salt ratio we talked about?
Yeah. 2 teaspoons per gallon.
He was arguing that that is actually far too low
Oh, wow.
and could even be dangerous, potentially leading to electrolyte imbalances.
Okay, so this isn't just a matter of preference.
Right, this is like potential health risks
Yeah, this is serious stuff.
if the solution isn't prepared correctly.
Exactly. And that's why I think having these multiple perspectives,
Yeah.
even those critical voices, is so valuable
Yeah.
because it reminds us that any information, even if it's from a trusted source, approach it with a critical eye, you know?
Right, always good to do your own research.
Exactly. Cross-reference, consult with healthcare professionals,
Right.
make sure you're making the safest choices for your body.
Couldn't agree more. So it's like, well, Subhash's experience and those of many of his commenters, paint a really positive picture of SP and its benefits. It's not a one-size-fits-all solution.
Right. Everyone responds differently.
Individual responses vary, and there are potential risks that we really need to consider carefully.
Absolutely.
But before we get too deep into those risks,
Okay.
let's talk about a gentler approach to this type of cleanse.
Okay.
One that might feel a little bit more accessible to our listeners who are maybe like, okay, I'm not trying to dive headfirst into the full SP experience. We're talking about Laghu Shankhaprakshalana, LSP,
LSP.
like SP Light.
XP light, exactly.
So instead of gallons of this saline solution,
Sure.
we're working with more like 6 to 8 glasses.
Much more manageable.
So still a significant cleanse, right?
Absolutely.
But potentially less intense, less disruptive.
Potentially, yes.
So LSP, it's like, dipping your toes into the colon cleansing pool
Right.
before you do the full cannonball,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
So what are we hearing about this LSP? What are people's experiences with this gentler approach?
Well, one reader, Prabhakara, found that LSP helped him manage his blood sugar levels. But, it's important to remember this is just one person's experience, right?
Of course.
I mean, we can't say, oh, LSP cures diabetes,
Right.
But it's interesting to see how these practices can have these unexpected effects.
Totally. And it's like what works for one person might not work for another.
Right. Absolutely.
And speaking of different experiences, you mentioned that you incorporate a form of Shankhprakshalan into your own routine.
That's right.
So fill us in.
I actually practice LSP daily.
Daily. Wow. Okay. So walk us through that. What initially drew you to this practice and what keeps you coming back?
Well, for me, it's about that feeling of resetting and recalibrating. I
Yeah.
find that starting my day with LSP just helps me feel lighter physically and mentally.
Okay.
It's like clearing out the cobwebs and just approaching the day with this renewed sense of clarity and focus.
That's right.
But again, this is just my personal experience.
Right, but it's valuable. And it highlights that there are all these different ways that these practices can be incorporated into our lives, right?
Absolutely.
So for our listener who's maybe thinking, okay, daily LSP, that's a bit much for me, but this whole thing has me intrigued. Where do they even begin? What would you recommend as a starting point?
Honestly, I think the most important first step, always, 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 is to consult with an experienced practitioner.
Right, find that guide.
Right, because they can assess your individual needs, address any concerns, and just guide you towards the safest and most appropriate approach for you.
Okay, so finding that guide is step one, paramount.
Yes.
What about those yoga asanas, those specific poses that we were talking about earlier?
Yeah.
Is that a good place to start, like maybe incorporating those into a regular yoga practice just to kind of see how your body responds?
Absolutely. In fact, I think that's a great way to begin exploring these practices.
Okay.
Start incorporating those poses, the Tadasana, Tadasana,
Right.
all those tongue
Yeah,
twisters,
get those flashcards out.
and just see how your body responds, how they make you feel.
So it's like a little sneak peek into the physical aspect of it
Right.
without the, intense cleansing element.
Exactly, exactly.
Okay, so start slow, do your research.
Knowledge is power.
Yeah.
The more you understand about these practices, the more empowered you'll be to make informed decisions about your own well-being.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Shankhprakshalan, I think it's clear that this is about so much more than just, fleshing out your colon.
It's deeper than that.
Yeah, it's really about exploring that mind-body-spirit connection track.
Exactly.
It's about, understanding the power of these ancient practices, respecting the wisdom that they offer.
And honoring, I think, the uniqueness of each person's journey.
Absolutely.
What resonates with one person might not resonate with another, and that's okay.
That's okay.
There's no, right or wrong answer here, only what feels right for you.
Love that.
Right.
Yes. So if you're feeling called to explore Shankhprakshalan, whether it's the full SP experience, the gentler LSP, remember, do your research, seek guidance, listen to your body, and approach the whole process with respect and that mindful awareness.
I think that's a great note to end on.
Yeah, I think we've given our listeners plenty to ponder.
We have.
Until next time, keep diving deep, keep exploring.